Yeah, baby.
Oh,
Master
yeah.
Phil here with Master Phil in your corner. Another great episode where we're going to take on some of the big items that are, plaguing society right now. As always, I'm here with Dougie Fresh Friedman from the Undefeated Studios. And we have an extremely special guest today, extremely important, special guest, very, very talented, very, very knowledgeable in this field. He's been on before. He is none other than the retired law enforcement officer who is also the former head of the union, and he is the chair of a college, the policing department at a community college, where he is also the director of the academy. None other than my man, Percy Alston. Bring it in.
Hey, hey.
What's going on, Dougie Fresh and Master Phil? What's happening?
Welcome, welcome.
A lot of stuff is happening right now.
Good to be on again, and a whole lot different from the last time I was here.
Yeah, definitely. And a whole lot of things have changed since you've been on the last time. I mean, it seems like the world's gone crazy. First we had the coronavirus, which is still plaguing the country. We've done enough talk about that. But now we have this whole thing where they want to defund the police. We see it started with that disgusting display of that knee on the neck in Minneapolis, which, from what I understand, that was an approved technique from the Minneapolis Police Department.
It may have been approved in Minneapolis, but where I live, it's not. It's not something that we teach in our police academy. And, there's a whole lot of, let's go right to the crux of it. A whole lot of training issues wrong there, along with the fact that this guy probably should never have been a police officer.
Yes, I would agree with you on every count, just to get that right out in the open. And just for the people, the audience's edification on this, I've been in a lot of situations, as you have, and some of them we've gone back to back on. Never have I once put my knee on someone's neck, ever. Okay? If you put your knee on someone's neck, nothing good can happen from that. Okay? Especially for 9 minutes. I mean, that's just ludicrous. You have to want to kill somebody to do that. That's just one man's opinion. And I don't know who the heck was reviewing those techniques, but you know what? That whole area was, as far as I can see, Democrat run. And I don't know how these training methods were approved by anyone. You talk about defunding of the police. I don't know how that's going to help matters, but maybe we could just run with that a little bit, because, it's funny. When they brought up defunding the police, immediately people started bringing up how Camden, New Jersey, they defunded the police, and then crime went down. And whoa. Wait a minute. Let's back that up. First of all, Camden is like the armpit of New Jersey. And no offense. But Camden, when they defunded the police, they had to do it because of corruption, low pay. I mean, it was a terrible situation. And they had 250 cops. When they defunded the police, they did it because they couldn't afford them anymore. And they brought in the county police. Now they went from 250 officers to 411 officers who were not on the take and not underpaid. And you know what? That's why the crime rate went down. I mean, it's still astronomical there, but defunding the police, they're trying to say it was a good thing. That's a total misrepresentation of the actual truth. You're going from 250 to 411, and that's what defunding the police did for them. But I don't think that that's what these people are talking about, defunding the police in that manner by having someone else come in. Are they, Percy?
No, I mean, that's definitely not defunding. That's just changing. That's getting rid of Tom Brady and bringing in Cam Newton. But it's definitely not. You're not eliminating the New England Patriots, which might not be a bad thing. But but no. So and I watched some stories and read some articles on the Camden transformation, and they brought in, like you said, a larger agency. Part of the thing was there's people there that don't live in Camden. Well, most of the NYPD officers don't live in Manhattan. One, they can't afford to, and they don't want to. So, unless you're willing to double the salaries for the people to live there, but the crime rates are so high, nobody wants to live there. So that's why they live outside of the city proper. But, I'm sure we'll delve into it, but so much of it goes to training, but leadership. If there was, and I don't know the history of the Camden Police Department, but from the original city police department, if there was a lot of corruption and internal, problems, then that's leadership as well. So it starts at the top, and there's got to be a method for eliminating or rooting out the bad cops. And trust me, good cops don't want to work with bad cops. And this is, something that I say a lot, is that police officers, police departments are a microcosm of society. We are the same as every other organization. There are some good cops, great cops. Most of them are great cops, 99.9% of them. And there's a very small percentage of them that are corrupt and dirty. And the good cops want them gone as well. So, we're really on the same page where we want those people out. There's got to be a process for eliminating those people, and most agencies have those processes in place. But the agency has to do things the right way to get rid of those bad cops. There's a lot right now where I live. There's a process that we have where officers can take up. It used to be up to 10 days to give a statement after a shooting. They changed the law. Now it's down to 5 days. And there's a big, with everything going on, there's a big push right now to get rid of this process, to eliminate the officer having the ability to take 5 days. Okay, well, now I will invoke the Fifth Amendment, and I'm not going to give a statement at all. The process that we have now compels the officer to give a statement. It can't be used against him in a criminal trial, but at least for your administrative an investigation, you get a statement from the law enforcement officer. But these people don't realize that even though we are police officers, we're still United States citizens, and the Constitution and all of the amendments still apply to us. Yeah. So they don't think about these things, and sometimes,
Well, let me ask you this. Okay, so it was at 10 days. And then down to 5, and now they want it down to 0. But if you could just take us through that, why 10 days, why 5 days, and what's the difference between them? What are the advantages, disadvantages? I mean, obviously,
seems to help the media. Seems to help the media.
Obviously, taking a statement right away, the officer's heat of the moment, they may, they may be confused, or your adrenaline's pumping. You haven't had time to really think and reflect on what exactly happened. Maybe they haven't had a chance to talk to counsel about it. Maybe they don't even know exactly what happened. They have to hear from somebody else, their partner or something. So, okay, I can understand not doing the heat of the moment, but what is the difference between 5 days, 10 days, 1 day, 0 days? No.
Well, originally 10 days was put in there, and after a critical incident, your body goes through physiological changes. Yes. With time, as time runs through, you start to remember certain things. Your body starts to return to some form of normalcy. You can talk to counsel, gives you a chance to sort of get things together, not to lie or cover up anything, but just to, your body to return to normal. But guess what? Anybody who's conducted an investigation knows, in a critical investigation like a shooting, the agency generally is not ready to take that statement within 10 days. Rarely are they ready to take that statement right away. So, the agency I was with, we did what's called a use of force report. So we would give the brief description of what happened without giving a formal statement with your counsel. So they lowered that to 5 days. That's fine. Still, the agencies aren't ready to take that statement in 5 days. What you want to, conducting that investigation, you want to talk to all the witnesses. You conduct, your forensic investigation. You do everything you need to do with a normal investigation. Once you have all that together, then you speak to the officer involved and get their statement. When you know when you know as much as you can know all of the other facts. And so, I shudder to think what will happen if they get rid of this protection that we have where I live. And then officers just say, well, I'm not going to give a statement at all.
Right.
Do your investigation and we'll go to court.
It's funny because, I look at this, and again, having been in several situations where S went wrong and had it got physical and so forth, you don't really know the full breadth of what occurred right at that time. Many times, we had to talk to other people. Okay, oh, you did this, you did that. This is what happened. And then you kind of remember it. Then you remember you. It's very difficult for you to recall when you react in a situation. And this is one of my problems. Leads me to another thing. They have these police community commissions, and who's on these? Who are on these boards? Because obviously, I'm listening to some of the statements they're making, and to me, they've never been in a situation. They've never been in life or death. They've never had to do what a police officer has to do, and yet they're commenting on, well, they should have done this, should have done that. Like Joe Biden, oh, shoot him in the leg.
Well, let me just correct one thing, Phil. So after you're involved in a critical incident like this, a shooting, you're given a direct order not to discuss it. So you're not going to talk to other officers to find out what happened. They're not going to allow you to watch your body cam, the cameras, things like that, because they don't want you to shape your statement based on what you hear, what you see. They want it, basically fresh from your memory. So, so there is no, the collaboration between the officers and witnesses, things like that. They want it specifically from that individual officer.
Wow. Here, honestly, this is where I think there can be a disconnect here, because I'm just going to go from personal experience. Is when I've been in situations, until somebody told me something, I don't really know what I did, and then I remembered, oh yeah. Okay. And then it jars your memory, because you're in the heat of the moment. Adrenaline is coursing through your veins, your heart's pumping. You're just reacting on your training. You remember bits and pieces, but heck, sometimes that full memory doesn't come until you speak with someone or review a video.
Oh, and it happens all the time. They'll ask the officer, how many shots did you fire? 1 or 2. And it turns out they fired 10 shots. But with the adrenaline going and everything going on, you don't realize, how many you fired or what you did.
That's why I laugh at these people when they say, oh, why'd that cop fire their whole magazine? Or they call it clip. They do the wrong thing. Why'd they empty their clip into the assailant or whatever? Well, they probably didn't even know they did it. They were just reacting on training. And hey, the perp is still moving. Their lives are still in danger, or somebody else's life is in danger, and they're doing whatever is necessary to stop the situation.
I guarantee you, I can't guarantee you, but I would venture to say that once again, those 99.9% of officers, probably more than that, never wake up in the morning and say, I'm going to go out and kill somebody. Right. They get up, they go to work, they want to fight crime, lock up the bad guys, and then at the end of the day, they want to go home to their families. That is it. They want to do good in the community. I know so many officers who help members of the community, buy people lunches and dinners and give them, drive them around and take, speaking to one of our graduates yesterday evening who was telling me that she was working. She's a younger officer. She was working and she was visiting the elderly in her area just to make sure they were okay. She's not assigned to do that. That's not part of her job description, but she's a good person. And so that's what she was doing. That happens all the time. But we don't, besides me saying this right now, nobody knows about that.
No,
she's not looking for that attention.
No. You're just doing it because that's the type of person that she is. She's the one that wants to make a better community. And here's the thing that makes me laugh. How do people think that a cop doesn't want their community to be better? If their community is better, their job is easier. Do you think, I mean, like you said, most cops don't go out there and say, I'm going to go and break somebody's head today. I'm going to do this. I'm going to do that. No, there's no training in the academy that tells them to do that. And they're going through the screening process. These are not the type of people that we want to be cops and that are being put up for the most part. Now, one of the things that I can understand, I can appreciate that happens, that maybe a cop starts out one way and then after years of abuse, especially the stuff that's going on right now, I mean, maybe then they develop maybe a racial bias or a very tough or they seem to care less when their efforts are being thwarted or they're being beat up like constantly. I mean, they're not, nobody's talking about us right now, but listen, I know of many injuries that are occurring in New York City right now. I mean, there's one cop just in the past few days, he got smashed in the face with a brick rolled at him, crushed his orbital, and he's never going to see out of that eye again. There are many cops that are being hurt in these riots, with these peaceful protesters and so forth, and nobody's talking about it. Nobody's even addressing it. It's like they don't even care.
Right, and I mean, it's that's not in vogue right now. That's not the thing to talk about. You've got to be talking about Black Lives Matter, COVID-19. We got to get rid of Trump. We have to, there's so many other things that we need to do. But the fact that police officers are being injured and killed and shot at on a daily basis, no, that's not the narrative.
I know, and then they position it so if you are not for the Black Lives Matter movement, you are a bad person. You're a racist. You hate. And let me tell you something. If you look at the people who run the Black Lives Matter, they are avowed Marxists. It has nothing to do with they're just black or white. They're just using this as their cover so they can drive that Marxist anarchist agenda down our throats. And they are avowed Marxists. They admit that they are trained avowed Marxists, and this is what they want to do. And this is how they advocate change, is through anarchy and radicalism.
Sure. And one of the things like Antifa, groups like that, their thing is, all right, we're going to hitch our wagon to Black Lives Matter. We want to get rid of law enforcement, and then we can come in and do our thing, cause the anarchy and chaos, and disrupt the capitalist society and bring in communism.
Yeah. I mean, communism, socialism, they're responsible for more deaths than any other economic system worldwide ever. And yet capitalism is responsible for the most advancement and more prosperity people worldwide than any other system. I just don't understand that these people don't want to read history. I think that they're just a bunch of spoiled little basement dwellers that they don't want to work for a living and want to get handouts.
Well, yeah, I mean, but you look at Marxists historically, want to get rid of education system, religion, capitalism, advancement, private ownership and things like that. And it's like, I don't know. I sort of support those things.
Yeah. I mean, it's funny because you look at, if you read about Marxism, it's very utopian. Okay. Right. Yeah. But you know what though? Somebody always rises to the top, no matter what. There's always going to be a top dog. Okay. There's always going to be a leader. And the thing is, with our society, anybody can make it up to the top. In the totalitarian society, no, it's locked, man. It's locked. You have your proletariats and you have your leaders. That's that.
Doug and I were talking a little bit earlier about Seattle and how, that whole, the CHOP, Chaz, whatever group you want to call it, they're against the walls. Yet they build the walls. They're against law enforcement, yet they created their own security force led by the warlord running around with an AR-15 at night. Right. It's going to be, like you said, the utopian society, yet now they started having the murders. after the first couple of days, it's like they reach back out to the organized government and said, "Hey, can we have some food, and can you come clean our porta potties?" Because they're not self-sufficient and they're not prepared. And I'm so glad to see the I'll call it the mayor and the police department there moving back in and moving out those people who are terrorizing the business owners and homeowners, the people who live there and work there. And you've got these outsiders who come in and have moved in and just taken over that area, and that's a shame. You and I were talking about it yesterday. Luckily where I live, there's not a whole lot of public transportation, and it's a primarily African American, but more affluent African American community. The people who live in the community where I live, we want public safety. We want to be protected and feel safe. I don't want to go to a store or go out and feel unsafe or be in a place where people are rioting and looting and things like that. That's not everywhere, but you look at the places where you're seeing the looting and the rioting.
Yep. Look at them, and look who's running them.
Exactly.
Same people are running for decades. And you look what's happening in New York City. I mean, right now, New York murders are up 43%, just because they're defunding the police. And I don't know if you saw that there was a video of the are you pulling it up? There's video of them painting over the police cameras, standing. Really? Yes, they're dipping and painting the security cameras.
I did see in broad daylight in the middle of New York City, woman's walking down the street with her purse, guy comes up from behind her, chokes her out, takes her purse and runs. Broad daylight, middle of the street.
It just happened the other day. Big African American black guy was walking down the street and saw there's a woman, it's on camera, about 40-year-old white woman, just runs up to her, punched her right in the face and kept going. Like, what's going on? And this is what happened from the police. Or what happened? Or what happened? The 16-year-old young black kid got killed in shot in Chaz, Chop, Chip, whatever. Hey, that's great.
I know one of the shootings in Chop. The person bled out because they couldn't get in there to get them out to the hospital.
Well, yeah. And how about the fires? They had to call the fire department in to come put their fires out. I mean. I don't know why they just didn't, right from the get-go, shut off the power, the water. Hey, you generate it yourself. You're self-sufficient. They sponged off the city and they occupied people's private property.
Because that would be cruel and unusual.
Yeah. How about
if you cut off the water and power?
Yeah.
They're a new country now, so they got to figure it out.
Figure it out, man. Pay for it. It's so funny though how I know I'm reiterating what we discussed before, but how they're against borders, against the Second Amendment, against police, yet they put all those three things in place as soon as they walked in. I mean, come on. You guys, do you not realize the hypocrisy of what you're doing? And the thing is that most people, I don't care what your skin tone, background, where you're from, most people just want to have their job, live their life, raise their family, hang out with their friends, and enjoy themselves and try to be successful. That's most people. The unfortunate thing we have right now is we have the loudmouths just getting all the attention. They say the squeaky wheel gets oiled. But man, how much oil are we going to have to put on this thing to get it to stop squeaking? That's the question. And are we willing to keep putting oil on it when they keep squeaking? If you look at some of the things that are happening, as far as policing goes, first, what do you think? What do you think can be done? I mean, how about we touched on this before, but then we didn't expand on the point. Now, a police officer goes to the academy, goes to psychological evaluations, blah 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 blah. They're doing great. They're not racist. They don't hate anybody. Boom. All of a sudden, 5 years of getting spit on, called every name under the sun, and then arresting people and then having them out on the street before they finish processing the paperwork, maybe it creates something inside of them. Now, one, what can we do about that as far as evaluating the police? And two, can we do any other reforms that do not enable this to happen so readily and easily?
Well, I think a lot of it goes back to training, but in the screening process, getting people in. I mean, like you said, somebody comes in, they go to high school. Where I live, all you need is a high school diploma, but many of them have college degrees. So you get a college degree, you decide you're going to join the police department. You come in, you're idealistic. You want to, I want to serve my community and make the world a better place. That's the standard line during your oral board. And you get out there and you start to do that, but then you start to see, every day you're going to calls for people in distress or people who have committed crimes. You don't go to the nice old lady who lives on the hill because she just calls up because she's having a great day and she wants to say hello. I mean, you do get those calls, but very rarely. You get the call for the robbery, the domestic, the stabbing, the shooting, things like that. You see murders, you see kids being abused. And when you see that day after day, that's what you see day after day. Yeah, it can change you. It can definitely affect you. So does there need to be some recurring evaluation? Yeah. So they where I live, they looked at it and they talked about introducing legislation that would require mandatory psychological evaluation after, initially it was like every 2 years and so when you start looking at that, one, can't afford it. Nobody can afford it. And secondly, we don't necessarily think they want to know what the results are. Because if I've been on the police department now for 5 years, and when I came on, I was psychologically sound, and now 5 years later, I'm a soup sandwich, and I shouldn't be a police officer anymore. I'm going to retire on post-traumatic stress disorder, and now I'm going to be covered for the rest of my life for that disability. So the cost is tremendous. The fiscal notes are tremendous. And also, like I said, the results. Now, I don't think it's not like every officer is going to be traumatized to that extent. But, does there need to be some reevaluation? Sure. But let it be just some just general counseling. So you can see. And then if those bells and whistles are triggered, then you can take some action. But even with that, this is sort of takes us to the Second Amendment again, the old HIPAA violations. So I go to talk to my psychologist or my psychiatrist.
Yep.
He can't disclose that unless I allow him to.
Wow.
Or if it's mandated that I go in and I just sit there and go, yep, everything's great.
Yeah.
And then, so what can that doctor say? Because I haven't said anything that's giving him any information that's dangerous. So
now, what about this? And maybe someone's tried this already. You're telling me this, and I'm just thinking outside the box here. What if there is some sort of periodic, I don't know, 3 months, 6 months, a year, I don't know, whatever you wanted to pick a determined time, where you have sessions where you have it more like a group session with the police officers, and they bring up scenarios and they talk about stuff and how things happen during these occurrences, and then maybe here's what you want to do and here's how you process that. Maybe some things you have to compartmentalize, maybe some things you have to change your mode of thinking on. I mean, is that something that's viable? It's something that's been done already? I don't know.
There are definitely groups that get together to discuss incidents, things like that. Of course, a lot of them can't talk about the incident they were involved in because pending civil litigation or criminal, they wouldn't go to the group. But a lot of guys won't open up in that type of session. But I think a lot of it goes to training. So we need more enhanced training for use of force, de-escalation. You and I have talked about it, and I run a police academy, so I truly believe this. I wish I had more time to do self-defense and defensive tactics, because I do see that. And look, I'm not going to talk about specific incidents necessarily, certain things here, but when we show videos and we see videos of things that have occurred on the street, and I show them to my recruits, we learn from the actions or mistakes or what officers do well. Yeah. But I wish I had more time to train them in self-defense and tactics, because so many of these incidents may not have escalated had the officers been better trained in arm bars, wrist locks, takedowns, things like that. I think when we look at the incident in Georgia, in Atlanta, when those two officers are grappling with the suspect, had they been better trained, and look, I don't train in martial arts now at all. I'm also not a police officer right now, but as a police officer, I believe they should receive more training in that, but it's got to be on a regular basis. Yeah. I can't just show a technique in the academy, have them practice it for an hour, and that's the last time they ever use it or do it. And then when they get on the street, they're not going to be able to apply it. They may remember something may jump up, and they may use something that works well. But I know when I came on the police department, a lot of the things that you and I trained with, I was able to use, and I can't recall ever using my nightstick and just wailing on somebody over the head. I was big and I'm strong. I was able to use wrist locks and arm bars and take people down and put them down, and it worked. Yeah. So, but I think if we do that on a more regular basis, but it's got to be continual. It's just like firearm training for law enforcement. These guys, a lot of officers, they use their weapon once a year when they qualify, and they put their gun away. They may have to pull their gun out and, display it, whatever, put it away. But they need to practice and shoot. That's how you get more proficient, is by practicing firing. I love to shoot. Luckily, I'm in a place where I can shoot more often now, but I didn't have that generally when I was in as a police officer. I worked on some federal task force where I had to qualify quarterly, plus with my agency. So I had to qualify 5 times a year and had unlimited ammunition, could go and shoot whenever we wanted. And guess what? I could shoot the gnat off a cow's tail, So, when you practice, you get very good at what you do. So same thing, like I said, and you preach this all the time about training in self-defense for law enforcement officers. I think that will reduce some of these incidents that escalate.
I couldn't agree with you more on that. Because I know that I've been working on stuff to get my Leo less than lethal program put forth. But you were also a wrestler and a martial artist. I mean, you can take somebody down. You can put a wrist lock. You can put an arm bar. You trained extensively for a long time like that. A lot of these guys, like you said, they do it in the academy a little bit, and then how many of them practice it after, and then even less people go for more extensive training. The thing is that, and here, if you look at it, how many officers go through a 20-year, 25-year career without firing their weapon? Quite a few, right? Most of them. And yet, how many put their hands on someone on a daily basis? And you don't know how to do this properly? Okay, you know what? Training in the martial arts or having a wrestling, grappling background, things like that, that's going to lower the use of force because you know what you're doing. The other thing is when you show up, you command respect. Why? Because you have confidence in your abilities. You don't have to rely on a weapon or you don't have to beat the crap out of somebody with a nightstick when he can take them down and put them in an armbar. Doug, you had something to add to that?
Yeah, I was just going to say it's like a little ironic that these things that we need to do require more funding and more resources than cutting stuff down.
Exactly.
So it's the opposite effect. Yeah.
Yep, it's going to have just the opposite now. So now you're going to defund the police. So you're going to lower the bar of the police who want to do it. And now, who wants to become a cop right now? I mean, I wouldn't want to be a cop right now. There's no way.
Well, they walked off in Atlanta. They handed in their badges.
Yeah, I have friends of mine who are retiring right now. They're like, I'm done.
Wow.
I know, Phil. You had said, giving them a couple hours a week to train. Well, that costs money because, all right, so now I'm going to pull that officer off the street for, say, 6 hours a week to allow him to train. Well, he's on the clock. Who's working the street while he's training? You have to have more officers. So that goes to Doug's point and all of our point. That requires more funding to hire more police officers so you can do more training and have the officers to cover what needs to be covered.
Exactly. Well, you know what? What do we want to keep having these incidents, or do we want to lower this use of force? Do we want to make it so that, look here, take Atlanta, for example, and you brought up before. Those guys knew less than nothing about grappling and ground technique. They knew nothing. That guy, was the perpetrator wrong in my eyes? Absolutely. He was drunk. He was on parole, and he assaulted police officers and shot at them with a taser. Okay. That's wrong. But it didn't have to get to that point. If they knew any type of grappling, the two of them could have held him down easily. Like, okay, if you and I showed up there, would he have a problem with that guy?
He would have been taken down.
Right. It would have been a non-incident. It would have been a non-incident. Okay. So, and listen, you're a police officer. The unions, the police, they got to fight to have this training and get it in. I want there to be less of these incidents of excessive force. And you know what? By being proactive and going out there and saying, hey, you know what? We're training in martial arts right now. We're doing jujitsu. We're practicing grappling techniques to lower these incidents. You know what? That's going to be a great public. The public's going to love to see that, and it's going to help. And you know what? If you have to pay for things, then you do. Let me tell you, in corporations, when they want to educate people, what do? They put aside the funding to educate their staff. You got to make an investment in these police officers, and I'm sorry, but it has to be done. And if you don't, these same things are going to keep occurring time after time after time after time. And here's another thing. And I wanted to get your perspective on this too, because you'll see why. It's been this big thing right now. It's always like the white cop and the black perpetrator, or the perpetrator of color, whatever it is. But in these major cities, generally at least 50% of the police officers are of color. How has this view of policing affected the officers of color in these police departments?
Well, unfortunately, I think you see there is a separation between officers,
Really?
and there are many officers who feel as though there is discrimination and racism within the institution of the law enforcement institutions. I was blessed during my career. The people that I worked with, we did not discriminate, and I mostly worked in narcotic units, but we went after drug dealers. It didn't matter who they were, what race, what their color, it didn't matter. But so there is a rift amongst law enforcement in certain places.
Mm-hmm.
But you look at a lot of the leadership of a lot of the large agencies now are minority led, to include the mayors, city councils, chiefs of police. And unfortunately, these incidents are not slowing down or changing. the biggest change right now than where this is growing, where it seems that like we're seeing more, is video.
Yeah,
these things are caught on camera now. Social media, we can see it. Had that not been recorded, George Floyd, the cities aren't on fire right now. You know, there would have been another incident that would have caused it, but this place, this time, right now, being on camera is what caused it. You know, so there's a lot of racial tension. I have a good friend who is retired now, and he wrote an article on and published it that talking about how he was discriminated against as a young 17-year-old, 16, 17-year-old, had a gun put to his head, and that caused him to want to be a police officer so he could make a difference. And then he claimed, he says that he has seen so many bad things, negative things on the police department. And it caused a lot of friction because basically he was insinuating that if you are white, you are racist. And so all, his white friends were like, oh, by the way, his wife is white and his kids are mixed race. And so he, it was challenging. So a lot of his white friends were like, if that's the way you feel, then we can't be friends. I want us to be able to have a discussion about things that are going on. So look, I don't support the Black Lives Matter organization. I understand the phrase and that term. I also support all lives matter. I think everybody's life matters, but there are kids and people that are born into poverty, into some poor child born in, it doesn't have to be, notice I didn't say the race, some poor child born in a city like Detroit. And so they're born into poverty and they have terrible schools. Their parents might be addicted to drugs or don't have good jobs or don't have jobs at all. So they know they're living off the social services. That's what they know. That's what they grew up. And they're really for them, where is their opportunity to get out of that? I know you and I always say, just pull yourself up by your bootstraps and just work hard and you can achieve anything you want, because that's where we came from. And our parents, that's where we were raised and how we were raised. Mm-hmm. But for that kid born in that situation that I discussed, what's his chance? What are his chances of getting out of that until he becomes an adult and then maybe has the opportunity to change that? But other than that, he's that guy who's protesting right now. Yeah, he's that guy who's saying, this system sucks. It doesn't work. So I'm going to protest to change things. I'm not sure what I'm protesting to take us to, but I just know what I grew up in. It didn't work.
Yeah. I mean, and then you have the other flip side. You have a whole bunch of these white kids that are protesting too. That come from like a good suburban kind of household, and they've just been given participation trophies their whole life, so they haven't been accountable, and they can't get a job because they got a degree in Sanskrit, and they're $250,000 in debt, and they're living in their parents' basement.
And they got big floppy holy ears and a spike in their forehead, and they wonder why they can't get a job.
Right, and a tattoo on their neck, and they wonder why they can't get a job. It's society's fault, right? But the things that you bring up some very interesting points. When you're born into that system and that's all you know, what we have to do, and this is the really painful part that nobody really wants to address. How are we going to change that, and how do we get there? Because if you look at it, in the 50s and 60s, if you look at, let's just take African American homes. They were 75% had a full family unit. Okay, and now you look at it now, and it's like 21%. Okay, and now how did we get to that point? Who was responsible for that? And that's the government's intervention that made that possible. So, when the government's taking over like that, and they're breaking up the family and taking religion out, they want to get rid of the family, get rid of religion. They want the government to be the end all be all and create this dependency. That's where this whole socialist mindset's coming from when you're dependent upon the government. It's perpetuating itself. How do we stop that cycle? I mean, you keep throwing money against it, and they're throwing money against it. If you look at here, just like for instance, the Patterson school system. Okay, it's much more expensive. I don't have the exact stats. I had them at one point in time. It's much more expensive to educate a child in Patterson than it is in Ridgewood, let's say. And yet the Ridgewood product is so much better. Why is that? Are the teachers in Patterson not trying? I think there's some great teachers and they're trying, but what is the missing element? How are we going to break this cycle? And it's a painful cycle to break. And is anyone really addressing that? Have you seen anything on that, or does anyone have any conversation on that?
No, I mean, people aren't really prepared to have a lot of these tough discussions like that. Education, and education is the key. A lot of times, it's not the end all, the be all end all to everything, but it can lead to opportunities. But it's like nobody wants to discuss Chicago.
No,
the shootings and killings in Chicago. That majority of the killings are black on black crime, but we can't. Let's not that you're distracting from the Black Lives Matter movement right now. You're distracting from what's going on right now. So let's not talk about that right now. But let's cut the funding for Chicago PD, and let's have the Chicago PD do a work slowdown, or not even a work slowdown or anything illegal, but work to the letter of the law, do less proactive policing. Guess what's going to happen to crime? It's going to go up even more.
Oh yeah. Well, you saw what happened in the one area when they were doing the looting, and the cops weren't even taking care of that area. A Latin King got killed, and then the Latin Kings started going crazy and just killing lots of black people sitting in cars, and because it went nuts. And why? Because gangs take over. All power voids get filled. Okay, all power voids get filled. You see that in every time there's a takeover. The one thing I wanted to bring up on the Black Lives Matter was that, okay, of course Black Lives Matter. Show me someone who says that Black lives don't matter, then we have an issue. Okay? I mean, like you said, everybody's life matter, but then let's talk about the total situation, and talk about Chicago, talk about Newark, consider Baltimore, all these other places where black people are getting killed. I mean, killed left and right. Do you think we want to see that? Why do I want to see bad things happening in my country? I love this country. And I want the best for everyone in this country. I want the best opportunity for them. But you got to address these issues at the root, and nobody has the guts to do it. Because if a white guy does, oh, you're racist. If a black guy does it, they got to host a whole names for him. But people have to just have the guts and stick to it and keep going. And we have to address these problems. And now, when are we going to have these politicians take a hold of this problem and get it and fix it? That's what I want to know.
We're not. Hey, I hate to be the bearer of bad news, but it's like there's a legislation that House passed and Congress basically giving us open borders. And look, let the Democrats keep the House, take the Senate, and win the presidency, and all these draconian changes come into play, and you start letting other people in. And of course, these people are going to vote Democrat. That's the growing party. Numbers wise, they will eventually control everything. I mean, the major cities right now are controlled and run by the Democratic Party. And you see and for years, and you see the outcomes of what's going on there. People don't want a police state. We don't want to get the guns off the streets in New York. We don't want stop and frisk. So let's get away from that. Let's let people do whatever they want. You have to give them room to protest. Oh, and protesting includes looting and stealing and robbing. But they don't want the other end of that. But until we get to that, and you know what, it may not happen in our lifetime, but the pendulum always swings, and that's I believe why President Trump got elected. That pendulum had swung back, and people were tired of seeing where we were going, and now he's here. So I think I don't know. It'll be interesting to see what happens this fall. Very interesting. Oh, and sort of scary.
Yeah. Because I mean, if hey, listen, I know this morphed into politics. Because how can we not talk about politics when this whole police defunding is being pushed forth by the people that we have elected? But the Democratic Party isn't what it was 20, 30 years ago. And there's a big difference between a liberal and a leftist. A liberal will maybe disagree with you, but they can have a conversation with you about it, and they will fight for your right to talk. The left wing is a fascist group that does not want to hear your opinion. And if you have an opinion that's contrary to yours, you're a bad person.
Yeah. I mean, look, I think ideally I'm probably more of an independent. I wish they would eliminate the party system and we would just vote for the best person and they could have, the track record. But right now the party system rules, and it's because they have all the money. But I mean, the key thing I think that you said right in your last comments were communication. Right now, neither party is willing to talk with either the other side. Not even parties, but just people aren't talking to one another to get done what we need to get done. And, if we could communicate, I think we could come up with some solutions. But there's got to be a little bit of give and take. It's got to be somebody who's willing to meet in the middle, as opposed to, my way or the highway. And I'm this far to the left or this far to the right. And if you're not with me, you're against me.
Yeah. Here's the thing. I mean, unfortunately, maybe I'm honestly, I'm more of an independent libertarian type, but I mean, obviously I have voted Democrat before. I have.
Sure.
Honestly, I don't think I could ever do it again if the party stays this way. There's no way I could. And so therefore I'm forced to vote support the Republican, just because at least they have some semblance of something that I agree with. But do I agree with everything on the platform? No. I mean, the fiscal conservative portion of the party is gone with our, increasing debt, the amount of spending that we have. And honestly, there still is lack of leadership. I don't know why they're so wishy-washy, why they're so afraid to stand up. You have to make a stand sometimes, and sometimes you are going to take some heat. It just seems like everybody just wants to get reelected. So if we could have a situation where we have real term limits, then everyone's not worried about getting reelected. You have to go back to your real job after 2 terms or whatever it is. So I hear some feedback or something. Do you hear feedback? No.
Slightly.
Maybe it's just the voices in my head.
That's it.
That's it. It's got to be it. So, you're kind of forced in a situation where you have to go one way or the other. But the thing is that when what I see more of like, okay, here, let's say you support Trump. You say, okay, yeah, Trump does this and does some really terrible things that I don't like, and I didn't handle this right or that wrong. No, he does a lot of things wrong. But you look at the overall totality of what he's done, pretty good. But now, no one on the left ever admits to anything that they've done that's wrong. Never. They just push it on the carpet. Like anything that they do is okay. And you know what? That's not a way to have a conversation. You have to. I pride myself on the ability. Like I'll take a step back and I try to consider avenues before I form my opinion, and then I'll listen. I just don't see that happening a lot from the left. I really don't. And unfortunately, it's really having a negative effect on our society, and it's breaking us apart as a country. We should be unifying. We should be coming together. We should look for things to come together, not things to push us apart. And I think it's an issue.
Which is I don't know if you guys know, I don't know if you want to touch base upon this, but the NFL just announced they're going to have separate national anthems now for the first week of the NFL season.
Yeah,
so
how's that going to work?
I don't know, but I just feel like these are more things that are separating us rather than unifying us.
So the NFL will not have my viewership.
Well, they've been in they're a company, so they're doing things to obviously with thinking where they're going to get the most revenue. But it's just these are things that I feel like are separating us rather than unifying us.
Exactly, and the thing is also like what's being done right now, to me, is akin to racketeering, because these organizations are strong arming companies into kowtowing to their whim.
So let me throw this out. So, do you think the Redskins should have to change their name?
Honestly, no.
Well, apparently FedEx, and I guess one of the owners of FedEx is a minority owner of the Redskins. A couple of other large corporations, like billions of dollars, have said, separate yourselves from the Redskins or we're going to pull our association. So the Redskins are actually finally looking at, and I think right now with everything going on, Dan Snyder's like, you know what? I'll lose everything I've got if I don't change this name. And because it's one of those things where if there's 100 Native Americans who are offended by the name, then they should change the name. That's where they are. So they announced earlier today that they are fairly close to changing the name.
Yeah, I heard that too. I mean, I have another name for them, but we're trying to keep our podcast above board. So I don't care about the Redskins. Can't stand them, but we have our own personal reasons. But it's look. Do I want to offend anybody outright? Absolutely not. No. And I don't know. I really haven't looked into it that much, but I know that they're changing the name of a local high school here. It's Indian Hills, and they're changing the name.
So the word Indian is offensive now?
Yes, I know. You see what I'm saying? Where do you draw the line? You know what?
But we're not Indian. We don't understand.
Well, no. Maybe we should ask Elizabeth Warren.
She's got a little bit in her. So and so look, I've told you this before, and I've been saying this for years, not just now, that there would be a civil war in this country. I didn't know what the catalyst would be, if it would be race, economics, or some sort of biological, or an outright war, or the Second Amendment. And man, have all of these things sort of come together in the perfect storm now. We are, I call us baby preppers. We're not full bore, have the bunker and everything, but we have some of the little things. When I started teaching a class for annual in-service this year called Law Enforcement Preparedness. And so when we taught one session before we got shut down for the COVID restrictions, and when I was teaching the class, some of the guys were sort of laughing at me, sort of like, "Man, you're so far out there. This stuff will never happen." And a month later, I got calls from a couple of officers saying, "You know what? That stuff you said is all coming to fruition now." Yep. I'm a little bit frightened where this goes. I think there's going to be a rebound with the COVID-19. But I also think a lot of it is just more people are getting tested. I think we have the antibodies. I think if they develop this vaccine, hopefully in the next couple of months, that will change things. But if you go, more months, another 6 months or so with people not working, people not having the ability to feed and take care of their families, people will resort to doing what they need to do to survive, and that's when people stop being courteous and nice to one another, and then the wolves come out, and
heck, they're neutered or sheepdogs, so you're gonna be dependent on yourself. I'll tell you, people like kind of laugh at what I've done until now, because I'm fully stocked in certain things. I have my food rations, I have my water, I have the ability to have solar power, things for my devices and so forth. I have generators, have all that stuff. And you know what? Now everybody's scrambling around for that stuff. And guess what? I got it already. You want to laugh? We have our bug out bags forever, right? A lot of people don't have that stuff. You know what? I have water filtration systems. That I can drink water, and plus I have water stock. I have food for months that can be stored away.
I just traded in my vehicle. Didn't need to. It was relatively new, and I got a 4-wheel drive vehicle.
Yep. Yeah.
Just in case.
JIC, just in case. You know what? I got my pickup truck, and I got the other vehicle. I can have to say goodbye to my Challenger, but hey, if I gotta go, I gotta go. I'm not gonna worry about that. But it's a scary situation, and we have to think about it. You have to be cognizant of this. And look, it didn't take that long. And here's the other thing that really bothers me. I know you talked about the vaccine, and I'll tell you what. How effective do we really think that vaccine is going to be? When half the time they come out with the flu vaccine and it's like 20 to 50% effective. Okay. If people are relying on that. Now, the other thing is, what about the side effects that could happen here? Because you're going to tell me this is not rushed. They're rushing to be the first one, to come out with the vaccine. How are you going to have enough of a viable testing period on this in order to see, hey, is this thing really work, and what are the side effects? Look, I'm not taking that vaccine. I'll tell you what, I've been exposed to COVID. I didn't even get the antibodies, but you know what? I have O positive blood, and I'll tell you, I do all of my immune system boosting. I take my vitamin D. I've been espousing this stuff forever, right, Doug? Vitamin
Absolutely.
D. I take the C. I take a multivitamin. I take a liquid mineral. I take probiotics, the live cultures. I eat well, and I make sure I exercise. I keep my system in tune. And you know what? That's the best thing you can do. What are you going to be relying on this vaccine? If I'm relying on a vaccine, man, that's another way that they can control me, too.
And I know something you were saying early, and I heard a story last night about exposure to UV lighting and getting outside is one of the greatest things to help get rid of this. And when you sit inside, it weakens your system and it makes you more susceptible. And that's what they were doing. It's like stay inside, don't go out, and that was worse.
Well, you look at even what happened when Cuomo was so surprised that 66% of the deaths came from people that were locked down, and the other big portion of the deaths came from the people that were in the nursing homes when he sent back sick people to the nursing homes, and he's wondering why everyone's dying here. The thing is that, look, your immune system is akin to your musculoskeletal system. They operate on the same premise. If you want to get stronger, do you rest and do nothing? No, you work out, right? You give resistance to the muscles, and then they become stronger. Same thing with your immune system. We are exposed to germs, bacteria, viruses on a daily basis. The more that we're inside, the more we're in a sterile environment, the weaker our immune system becomes. You have to expose you. You have to be constantly challenging your immune system. That's why they, when kids got dirty and this, that, and the other thing, was the best thing for them. They build their immune system. Now, when a kid gets a piece of dirt on them, they sterilize them, and no wonder why their immune systems are so weak. And you stay shut in. You're not getting your sunlight. You're not getting your exposure. Oh, and plus a host of other things that happen too. People get depressed. When you get depressed, what happens to your immune system? It drops. When you're not having social interaction, humans are social animals. When you're not having that social interaction, what else is it doing to your psyche? What is it doing to your mind? And then how does that affect your immune system? How does it affect your body? I mean,
Yeah, I mean, there's so many, and you just think about, we started talking about today, and how it's all sort of, we've migrated through the minefield of everything going on right now, and it's just a perfect storm right now.
Storm. I mean, yeah, oof, yeah, we got everything. We got the anarchists, we got the race tensions, we got the class tensions, we got the COVID, we got the unemployment. I mean.
Yeah, here's the thing. The schools are shut down. So you got a family of 3 who has 1, maybe 2 computers. The parents are getting ready because they're starting to open things up, go back to work. But, there's no school for the kids to go to. They can't afford to put them all in daycare. There's only 2 computers for them to use. So what do the other 2 do? So, there's a myriad of issues that sort of progress. It's like, well, my business, there's a story in DC today about how the restaurants and the nightclub, there's a nightclub coalition where they're shutting down for good and moving out. They can't afford to pay the mortgage, and the banks who hold the mortgage can't give them enough of a break because they've got to pay their bills as well. So it's all related.
Yep. And then you have governors like Murphy here who the restaurants are supposed to open up on the 29th, for indoor dining, limited, but still open. So, these people are ordering food, bringing back staff, training people, this, that, and the other thing. 2 days before, I saw some people didn't have enough masks on. So, you know what? You can only have outdoor dining. I mean, these people are beat up enough. And now
I talked to a retired Secret Service agent yesterday, and he was telling me he went down south with his daughter.
Yeah.
And they like in the southern states, nobody's wearing masks. So he and his daughter were wearing masks, and people are looking at him like they were crazy. And look at the numbers down south right now; they're starting to go back up. But
but if you look at those numbers, I read all the charts yesterday. Yeah, numbers are going up because people are getting exposed, but the death numbers are way down. The death numbers are low. Look, and the other thing is that there's more testing going on. So the more testing going on, you're going to see the numbers come up. Why don't people just discuss this? You don't see that on CNN. You don't see that on MSLSD. You don't see it on any of these stations. They're not going to talk about it. Look, yes, COVID numbers went up. Yeah, no kid. We're testing more. And young people are like, forget it. If I get it, I get it. Who cares? I'll be fine. 99% of people are going to be fine. Now, of course, now, again, if you're in that at-risk category, heck yeah, protect yourself. Take the precautions. We got to protect them. The people in nursing homes, we don't want to shove more sick people in there, like New Jersey and New York did, and they're mocking out DeSantis down in Florida. He's got 3,500 deaths and a bigger population than New York, and a higher older population that's been protected. They got 3,500 deaths. New York has 33,000 deaths, and they're hurling Cuomo like this big. The guy's terrible. Ugh. So I have no opinion on this.
No, you're a shy wallflower.
But but again, all this stuff is tied together. And the thing that scares me is that they are just trying to destroy and emasculate our law enforcement. And then they're trying to constrain us more, so we're more easily controlled. So like this reminded me what happened in with Pol Pot in Cambodia with the Khmer Rouge, right? Where they went and he had the young hooligans take over, and they destroyed anybody with glasses got killed, because they didn't want any intelligent people around, and they just wanted to be controlled by these bands of, like, they're basically like Antifa, and they're going around destroying everything. Going around toppling statues and this, that, and the other thing. And again, look, I'm a little mixed on that because to me, I don't get the whole thing of embracing Confederate flags and things like that. I mean, you guys lost. So what other country permits a flag to be flown of a country that they, took over, or whatever, or lost the war, tried to secede? So I don't really agree with all that. But the fact that they're going after Washington, Lincoln, I mean, come on, you're going after Lincoln? Really? You're going after
he had slaves.
Lincoln? No, Washington did. Lincoln didn't. Lincoln didn't have slaves. Washington did.
No, I think he might have had some.
But Lincoln came from.
Look, it's let's just erase our history. Yeah. That's where we are. That's where we are right now. Let's erase history. Good or bad. Good or bad. Let's erase it.
Yeah, it doesn't matter. The funny thing is that there's not one country that right now that the people that lived there before just said, "Hey, come on and take us over." Well, maybe France, they gave up, but there's not one country. Countries get taken over by force. Every single look before the Americans took the land from the Indians were killing each other for that same piece of land. I mean, that happened. I mean, look at the Aztec warriors, the Incas, the stuff that they did to people. It's again, it goes back to that thing that someone's always going to rise to the top. Someone's always going to rise to the top. I mean, if you look at Chinese culture was way ahead of Western culture, way ahead of it, until they became communist. If you look, Chinese were the first with gunpowder. The Chinese also, they invented noodles. Marco Polo took the noodle to Italy and then got pasta. The Chinese were way ahead of everybody until they became communist. So,
and they have Mugu Gai Pan.
Yeah, that's some good stuff, man. But now they're so there's a whole host of things. But the thing is that we have to protect our sheepdogs, and we have to fight for our sheepdogs, or we're going to be taken over by the wolves. And the problem right now is that some of these wolves, they're wearing sheep's clothing right now, and they're infiltrating. And if this defund the police movement, I don't think that people even really understand what defund the police is. And I think that there are many people that have different definitions of it.
And look, I heard, and I don't know the name of the chief out of Texas. And it was a chief and a preacher were speaking, and I sort of agree with it. Is that take monies, not defund, but take certain monies, and there are certain calls for service that the police shouldn't go on and shouldn't go to, that could be handled over the phone. If your car's stolen, give us the information. There's nothing there. There's no need for no need for the police to go there. We'll get the information, put a lookout, enter it into the system. There are certain calls, but you can't send a social worker to a domestic or a counselor to a domestic and expect, how many of those domestic calls go south and end up in, fights and violence.
Yeah, Percy, the most dangerous situation for a police officer is a domestic violence situation. And you're going to send a social worker there, some little do-gooder person that's going to walk in and try to solve the situation. There are going to be more casualties. You see a guy drunk or high, and a little counselor comes in. Oh, sorry, sir, you have to shut up, bang. Then you get somebody else hit. Then what are you going to do? I mean, come on, use some common sense. Come on. It's so, when the idiocy is so apparent, I honestly just don't have the tolerance for it. It's just makes no sense.
Well, idiocy. But so what's our job? Our job is to try to educate people, to have the conversations, if you can, with people who are willing to listen and discuss. And look, somebody might bring up a point that's good, and if they bring up a point and they're able to change our opinion on something, I'm all about that. If there's mandated changes that come my way, the things that I have to do differently in training because the state says I have to, okay, then that's what we do, and we just figure out the way to do it the best way that we can. We do a really enhanced program on intellectual and developmentally disabled. So what we do is provide more training, longer training, scenario-based training, and we actually work with people with disabilities. And so hopefully when our recruits get out there, they will better respond to somebody with a mental illness, with a disability. So to be able to de-escalate that situation.
You hit the point. You hit the nail on the head with this point, is that it's about de-escalation. De-escalation, that's the key. And the ways to de-escalate. Hey, listen, you know what? If there's a domestic violence situation, maybe the cops should be dispatched with a social worker. I don't know. Maybe the social worker could add something to it, or I don't know, but I'm sure that there's a lot of intensive training for police officers with DVs because they're so apparent. I don't know. Maybe that's a point of discussion. The whole thing with the disabilities. I mean, that's a great thing that's being done. Why? Because you have people who don't have the mental capacity to understand maybe what they're doing is wrong. And then when they're confronted, they go crazy. They spaz out, and they're very strong and they're determined. And heck, that can be a bad situation for all parties around. So, there are certain techniques you can use to handle those situations.
And then part of it is for our officers when they go out
Recognize.
They're not there to diagnose sight on scene, but if they can recognize certain affects, then they know they have tools to better respond to that person, to that situation, to potentially de-escalate. But I like at the beginning of the class that we just did it this past week, I said, look, my first and foremost is for you to be safe. Your goal is to go home every night to your families, to get to the place where I am, where you're retired. So you're to be safe. It's not to let the guard down because we're trying to be, socially, politically correct. You've got to respond appropriately. But if we have tools to better respond, there are certain things that, when the incident in Philadelphia at the coffee shop, the people were there, but it was the people at the coffee shop who called the police, and they're like, we want them to leave. So you tell them to leave. If they don't leave, now they're trespassing. So it escalates. The police didn't go there just to pick on those people. They went there in response to a call for service. Does that, I don't know how do you fix that one, but that's the kind of call that escalated to a national story that should never have gone there.
No. And the thing is that also what unfortunately happens too is that when the videos go out there, generally they just show the piece of the video that makes the cops look the worst. They don't show the full thing.
Right.
Which, hey man, you know what? You have to understand the breadth of the situation in order to make a judgment. And the problem that I have is that many times the police are tried in the media.
Absolutely.
And you know what? That is so unfair. And the thing is that these civilian oversight committees, I have an issue with them. Who is screened for those positions? How do you get to one of those positions?
You go through a little bit of training, but not very much.
No.
Not very much. So so people have asked me. It's like what about the interaction between minorities and law enforcement officers? I said, look, I've been pulled over. When I get pulled over, I'm a retired cop. I got a badge. I'm armed, but I get a little nervous when I get pulled over just because I don't want to get a ticket.
Right.
But you know what? My lights go on. My hands are on the wheel. I comply. I'm respectful. And when I'm respectful to them, they're respectful to me.
Yep.
And so the interaction's good, as opposed to, some of these interactions go south so quickly. And then it goes back to what you said, Phil, where time after time after time, you're getting yelled at, spit at, cursed at, screamed at. And then when you have that traffic stop and the person's disrespectful right there from the start, it goes south. And it doesn't have to. It shouldn't. And
it shouldn't.
Hopefully a good professional police officer will be able to de-escalate that or ignore that the verbal response. It's not illegal. They can yell at you. They can curse at you. They can do whatever they want. They can videotape you. That's not against the law. As long as they have their license, registration, and proof of insurance, we're good to go.
His thing, I think it was 2013. I had a few guys out at the World Championships for Jiu-Jitsu out in California. So I'm in a rented car. I'm in LA and driving down the road, and it's a 6-lane road, and there's a crosswalk, and a group of people walk through the crosswalk. I'm all the way in the far right. Now they are getting, half of the group is already on the curb on the other side, and the other ones are on the far lane. So it's a 6-lane road. I'm on this lane. They're already on the other one. Going the opposite direction, traffic, so forth. So I proceed through the crosswalk. Yeah, okay. I didn't know this. Okay. So I get pulled over. I'm like, what am I getting pulled over for? Right. So what I do is I undo my seatbelt and I put my hands on the steering wheel and out the window. And the officer comes over, LA County, and I said, officer, just want to let you know, I took my seatbelt off because I didn't want to have to reach for my belt. I didn't want anything. Man, he went at me. He's like, I didn't ask you about your seatbelt. And I'm like, I'll tell you, my initial reaction, I want to punch him right in the face. I said, yeah, you want to yell at me like that? See what happens. Let's go. But, I relaxed. Okay. I said, just relax. Because listen, I don't know. Maybe this guy just saw a kid get killed. Maybe he just saw a big motor vehicle accident. Maybe his wife was having an affair with a mailman. I don't know.
Or maybe he's a jerk.
Or maybe he's just a jerk, But you know what? I don't feel like A, getting a ticket, or B, winding up in LA County jail. So you know what I did? I shut up and I complied. Okay? As much as it bothered me. And then all of a sudden I actually de-escalated the situation. And then a lot of people, I said, officer, I go, you mind telling me what I did? And then he's went off a little bit. And I'm like, gosh, I'm really sorry. I didn't realize that. And then, question why I was there, this, that, and the other thing. And then, and let me go, no ticket, not even a warning, nothing. Okay. But could that situation have been very bad?
And based on your description there, he was wrong.
He was wrong.
For it to escalate like that.
Yes, but you know what? Oh, and actually, I was in the front seat was a retired cop, and he goes, he was going to pull his badge and start if we had to, but he said no. But he goes, you handled it great. The guy was a jerk, but you know what? If I reacted improperly, or I let my ego get in the way, I'd have been locked up. I'd have had my face smashed in the pavement. 10 cops would be there on me before I know it. Okay. And, it's not the right thing to do. Did he do the wrong thing? Absolutely. But you know what? It's all about self-preservation. And you know what? I would have my day in court at some time, and people have to understand that people have a responsibility to themselves as well. This is about self-preservation. Okay. It's not only, being able to defend yourself, but it's also being able to do things that will prevent you from getting hurt or killed. That's the whole crux of Master Phil in your corner. So I'm going to give you tips. When you get pulled over, don't act like a jerk. Just comply. Don't give them a de-escalate. If the cop is doing the wrong thing, you know what? It's not your time to address it right then and there. You address it later on. Don't sit there and go, oh, what's your badge number? No, Hey, you know what? The badge number is going to be on the ticket. Just shut up and take your ticket. Okay? Address it later when you can de-escalate the situation. You want to make them look like a monkey in court, then go ahead and do it. But you're not going to do it there because you're going to lose. You're going, and it might cost you your life, or at least a lot of money in fines or a night in jail, and none of them are fun. So, take responsibility for your own protection. Should a woman have to train so that she can prevent a rape? No, but you know what? You better do it because it may happen. Should a guy have to train so he can handle a situation in case somebody tries to mug him or beat him up? No, but you better do it so you're prepared. It's called self-preservation. Should you have to sit there and de-escalate a situation with an aggressive cop? No, but you better do it if you want to live to the end of the day. So, look, there's a lot of things to be considered, and hopefully, instead of defunding the police, we look about allocating the funds and resources toward things that are going to give us better police, better equipped police officers. And look, and it's not going to happen overnight, and that's the problem. People want, in our society, it's such immediate gratification. Everybody wants it instantly. Look, hey, I'll tell you, when you try to find something online, it doesn't work. You get annoyed, right? If it doesn't, you Google search something, right, and it's oh man, this computer's taking too long. We want immediate gratification, right? So people think that these social issues are going to be handled in one protest, 10 whatever. It's not going to happen overnight. It's a gradual process. And you know what? Because if you do things too quickly, just like this development of this virus and the antidote for the virus, the vaccine for the virus, if you do things too quickly, you always miss something. You measure twice, cut once.
No, you're absolutely right. And the problem right now is these elected officials have to do something. So, yes, we're going to support defunding the police. Well, there's going to be a negative reaction for that action that you take, and things will get worse before they get better, unfortunately. And I'm often the naysayer, or I'm skeptical, but I try to be a realist. And I just know. I did a eulogy for a police officer several years ago, and I talked about, because there's a lot of elected officials there because they always show up for a police funeral. He was shot, killed in the line of duty, and I said, you all wanted a kinder, gentler police officer and police department. You didn't want us to do proactive policing. You wanted our hands off, and what you did was embolden the criminals, and now you have what you asked for: crime going through the roof, criminals emboldened it to a place where they would shoot at a police officer and kill a police officer. So you get what you asked for, and so the elected officials were mad at me afterwards, but I got, I had teary-eyed commanders and police officers from around the state saying, it was one of the best speeches they ever heard, eulogies they ever heard. But because I spoke for them and for the community, and that's what it was about. The community just wants to be safe.
Yes.
Police officers, we don't support heavy-handed policing. We don't want bad cops. We want them gone. But we've got to figure out a way to provide more training, better techniques, better equipment, and that will at least lessen these videos that we see that are so egregious and so terrible right now. That's just my opinion on that, and unfortunately, I just think it's going to get worse before it gets better.
You did bring up a point. The thing is that this kinder, gentler, like no stop and frisk, stuff like that. Again, look what's happening in New York City right now. Violent crimes, death, murders are up 43%. Okay, because when you don't have the undercover cops, when you don't have those, investigating, those detective units investigating, immersing themselves into the communities and finding out things before they happen, then the police force is relegated to a reactive. And you know that, you know what? With reaction, it's already done. The act has occurred already. You want to prevent things. That's not crime prevention. That is not crime prevention. You have to be proactive in these measures. You have to have police ingrained into these communities, forging these relationships, extracting information, stopping things before they happen. If you don't have that, crime is going to continue to rise. And you know what? And who's going to suffer? The law-abiding citizen. You know, the law-abiding citizen will suffer, and police will suffer more. And that police can get set up easier. You can be targeted easier.
Y'all are close to New York. Are they still talking about doing the blue flu this weekend?
Yes. Yeah.
So it'll be interesting to see, you know, come Monday morning.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. No, go ahead.
Can we? I'm assuming that means that police officers are gonna take a step back and go off the job. Can we explain what that exactly entails?
So depending on where they are. So where I am, we have collective bargaining and binding arbitration. And if we do any kind of work stoppage or slowdown, we lose our charter, we lose our union, basically. So we can't do any kind of work action. But in certain places where they have their PBA up there, different organizations up there, they do the blue flu. They call in sick. You can't stop somebody from calling in sick, but if enough of them call in sick, you stop patrolling, because you're not going to send a single officer to a domestic call, especially out in New York right now.
No,
so they do a blue flu, so they can require that you get a doctor's note before you come back. But okay, so you go to your doctor, or right now, last time I did a doctor's appointment was online. Hey doc, I don't feel well, and they email you a note says you're good. So that's the blue flu.
Gotcha.
Well, that's what they did in Atlanta. Remember we had the discussion, and that's what they did in Atlanta. They called in, and 95% of the police force did not come in. And he said, if you call in, you say, like, say you do a telemedicine, and you say, hey, you know what, I got a cough, I got this, that, I got a fever, what am I gonna do? And the doctor's gonna be like, hey, you got to be out for 2 weeks.
Yeah, and then when
you got COVID, staying
when the crime rate does go up and things go south, who are they going to blame?
Police.
The cops.
The cops. Why aren't you doing anything? And you know what I want? Here's what I want. I want everyone who wants to defund the police, all their cell phones, 911 doesn't work. Disable it. Go ahead. And, if I get heat for it, bring it. Bring the heat to me. I can care less. But I want every single loudmouth who wants the police defunded to remove 911 from their phone. Go ahead. Because you know what? When something happens, who are you going to call? Ghostbusters? So, so hopefully this podcast gets some ears, and people say, hey, you know what? This is something we need to really take a step back and consider, and hopefully we can have some real conversation about this. Because there does need to be some reform. And you know what? Hey, look, things evolve, right? Policing evolves, people evolve, societies evolve. I feel like right now we're devolving because of the lack of communication, the lack of cooperation. If we can have meaningful dialogue, things will evolve. Not just these crazy, outlandish demands and knee-jerk reaction to things that happen. You can't have that, man. And you know what? Cooler heads prevail. And if you don't have a cool head, it's not going to work. So, anyway. Hey, guys, Percy, always a pleasure to have you on the podcast. We always hit some topical situations, have some intelligent banter. And Dougie Doug Fresh, always pleasure to be here. And we got another one coming up Monday.
Yep.
Yeah. So, guys, have a safe and happy 4th of July weekend. This is Master Phil signing off. Strength and honor. Woo!